Let's go to the other two games, and we're going to group these together. I think there's a more general discussion to be had, Trey. Ole Miss beats Tulane 41-10. Oregon beats James Madison 51-34. Neither result unexpected, right? We literally got a carbon copy, I think, of Ole Miss and Tulane round one.
Oregon, Tulane did a little better. It was 45-10 the first time.
They did. And you know what? Tulane moved the football. They did. They put up yards on Ole Miss's defense. The problem was they got stuffed every time they went for it on fourth down. They had, I think, 3 turnovers in that ball game as well. Just you made way too many mistakes, right, to hang around and beat Ole Miss on their turf. But I think where we want to take this is two things. Number one, I want the positives from Ole Miss, Oregon. I want to know which of those two teams you think is more capable of winning a championship. And then I think there's a discussion to be had about the G5 and the future of the playoff, and I think what is ideal versus what's realistic, because I see a lot of complaining online, as is to be expected, right? The afternoon and evening games were not very entertaining. But I think just about everyone that I've seen, including the talking heads, is missing the mark or maybe even misleading college football fans. So we'll get to that in a second. Call that a teaser. Tell me which of these two teams, Ole Miss, Oregon, you were kind of more impressed with. Which of those two teams do you think has the battleship to go and win a championship?
Man, I was fully prepared to say Oregon, but Ole Miss's offense looked really impressive. And their defense, like you said, bowing up on those fourth downs, regardless of competition, that was really, really impressive. And especially when you consider all the intangible off the field stuff. If they can focus in, if they can lock in, we've already seen them play Georgia close this season, right? And Georgia was able to squeak that one out at home. But I don't know. Can the offense exploit Georgia's weaknesses on defense once again? I think that's going to be a very exciting game in New Orleans. I'm still high on Oregon. I've been proven wrong on Oregon. No, of course, I didn't think that this would be a close game with James Madison, but I think Oregon has the dudes, especially if they continue to get reinforcements on in the wide receiver core. I know Evan Stewart, I don't think played
I don't
last
think
night.
So.
He didn't register a stat, I know, but if they continue to get those guys back, that's going to be a really interesting matchup with Texas Tech, especially since Tech has not played a team the caliber of Oregon so far this year. So two very different second round matchups, a rematch versus a team that looks really good on paper, but really hasn't been tested to this level yet this year. I'm really excited to see both of those games.
Yeah, I think that Oregon Texas Tech game, and I talked about this when we did our preview episode, just kind of setting the stage for the playoffs in general. I think that's going to be a fascinating matchup because it is good on good. Texas Tech is one of the best statistical defenses in the country that get after you in the passing attack. You can pressure more into some issues, some mistakes. Dante threw 2 more interceptions yesterday. Had an electric first half, and then maybe slowed down, petered off a little bit in the second half.
Maybe a little lack of focus with the way the scoreboard was looking too. Yeah,
I think so. But for Oregon, and again, James Madison, not the caliber of defense that Texas Tech is going to throw out against you, but Malik Benson, 119 yards. Jeremiah McClellan, 83 yards. You had Kenyon Sadiq get into the action, right? DeCorian Moore is back and healthy. Only made 1 catch, but he's another versatile weapon. You talk about Gary Bryant Jr. being able to come back. And then Evan Stewart might be ready to go for this New Year's Eve game as well. Or New Year's Day game, I should say.
Yeah, New Year's Day.
And the Red Raiders are going to have their work cut out for them. They have not played a wide receiver core, a quarterback the caliber of Dante Moore. The offensive line has gotten better for the Ducks as the season has gone along. It's going to be a fascinating matchup, and I can't wait to see that. I think Oregon's defense is also likely one of the best, if not the best, most athletic, certainly, that the Red Raiders will have played this year. So I think that one in the full preview is going to be, that might be our longest full preview. I think that's the closest game on paper. I think Vegas agrees as well. I think Oregon is currently 1.5 point favorites. Last I checked for the Orange Bowl. So, the other spreads are all at least a touchdown. So Vegas tends to agree with that. But Ole Miss, not to sweep them under the rug either. It was clear that they were focused and ready to go. Now, can they replicate that on the road on New Year's Day at night in what's a pseudo home game for the Georgia Bulldogs. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think it's hard to beat a team twice in the case of Georgia over Ole Miss. Obviously, that wasn't a problem with Ole Miss over Tulane, but you saw that kind of play out in Alabama, Oklahoma this week. Yeah. So very interesting. Very excited to see all 4 of these quarterfinal games. I think that for all the wailing and gnashing of teeth of blowouts in the first round, and maybe this can transition to our secondary conversation on these games.
Yeah.
Quarterfinal round, man, is shaping up to be one for the ages. I'm really excited for it.
Should be a fantastic weekend. Again, that's New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. But you're right. Let's transition over to the group of 5 discussion. And Trey, I'll pose a question to you here. When you think of the discourse that you've seen online with James Madison, Tulane, the group of 5 in general, what's the first complaint that you think of?
I'm tired of the whining. Like, are you talking about like what I'm complaining about the complainers, or?
Well, no, more like what's the kind of the general sentiment that you see from the Twitter?
Yeah, that Notre Dame should be in because they went 10-2 against a relatively weak schedule instead of Tulane or James Madison, who went 11-1 against a relatively weak schedule and won their conference.
And the impact of that complaint is Notre Dame wouldn't have been blown off the field. Maybe Notre Dame would have beaten one of these 2 teams. Maybe they beat Notre Dame or beat Oregon, beat Ole Miss. But to me, that logic is flawed because, and I think Josh Pate has put out something about this, that he is anti-G5 not because he believes that they're going to get blown out, or that's his argument, but that he believes that their strength of schedule, that essentially they're playing a different sport. They haven't earned their way into the playoff. And I'll say this, I agree with him in principle given the current setup. I think this system that we've set up for the college football playoff is horribly flawed. Everybody can agree that it's broken, but they don't agree on why it's broken. I agree that the system is broken because we are automatically putting a G5 team into the playoff. I don't think that there should be auto bids really in general, or at least not 5. I think if you're going to have auto bids, you got to come to some sort of reduced number to where it becomes more of a, hey, we earned this, not less of a, well, we meet the criteria, so check the boxes, put us in as a conference championship. And that's where I'm really concerned about the direction of playoff expansion, more auto bids that are outside of the realm of conference champions. We're just giving auto bids to X number of teams from the SEC, X number of teams from the Big Ten. All of that to say, I agree with Pate and others that might be saying, hey, the G5 shouldn't have an automatic berth into the playoff. But we've got to get to a system where the G5 can still participate in the playoff, right? Nobody had this argument last year when Boise State was a top 12 team and they earned their way in. Yes, they checked the auto bid, right? They got that non-Power 4 invite, but Boise State earned that, and they competed with Penn State for a good chunk of that game. It was the turnovers that ultimately did themselves in. But where I get frustrated is people like Joel Klatt and the talking heads that are aligned with networks who patently are biased. They can't be unbiased because the people that are writing their checks are the very ones that set this system up, Trey. They're the ones that created the mega conferences. They're the ones that the media rights influence the way that we built the college football playoff. They're the ones that are pushing for college football expansion to happen with regards to the playoff field so that more teams get in, which means more games on their networks in front of more eyeballs. The problem is not the G5 teams playing in the games. The problem is the system that is set up by people that are not interested in the best product. They're interested in the most bites at the apple for their network. And that's where I think we've run aground here. That's where I'm so frustrated with the discourse online because I think it's mostly disingenuous. It's being fueled as a problem by networks and executives that need a problem in order to introduce their own solution to the equation. And that is what really rubs me the wrong way. And that's why I pinned a rather long tweet on our Twitter account, kind of exposing that line of thinking. So I don't know, like fair, foul, where do you come down on all of that?
No, that's well said. And I think anybody that's affiliated directly with a network that broadcasts these games, right? Be it Joel Klatt for Fox or Kirk Herbstreit for ESPN, they all got their marching orders this year. I think it was very clear to see. And that's why I just don't listen to those people. I know that they are the most powerful voices, and that's very unfortunate. But listen, I don't agree with everything that Josh Pate says. We've talked about some things we don't agree with him on this channel. I know you and I listen to other independent podcasts like The Solid Verbal and, our friends at Always Talking Ball, Walk on Red Shirts, our little community, so many other ones that I could list out, right? But I don't always agree with those guys, but I know that their takes are actual thoughts that they have processed, right? When Josh Pate says something like he thinks the G5 playoff is a good idea, I vehemently disagree with that. I think that that's silly. The G5 teams do not want that. If you talk to their fan bases, by and large, it's all people saying, oh, I would watch this. And no, you wouldn't. Like we see what you talk about on your show every day. Like that's not something that you would go out of your way to watch. But I know that they've actually thought through those opinions and actually think that that is best for college football. I can disagree. But when someone like Joel Klatt says it, I know it's obviously just shilling for his network. And that's so annoying that those are the power brokers. But that's a meta issue that I don't know how we solve, quite frankly, Mitch. What I do want to talk about with the G5 representation in the playoff is, one, they need representation. They're absolutely right. There needs to be an avenue for a G5 team to get into the playoff. Otherwise, they need to just drop to FCS. Like this G5 playoff individual nonsense where we're kind of creating another subdivision.
Yeah.
I guess if all of the schools vote for that or the conferences themselves vote for that, fine. Like I'm for them getting autonomy in that decision. What I'm not for is them being forced into that decision. Because quite frankly, the top of the G5 is better than the bottom of these Power 4 conferences. Like
sure was this year.
Like you're going to tell me that you're going to pick Purdue over Tulane straight up on a neutral field. I'm not. I'm picking Tulane in that game. And we saw Tulane beat Northwestern, who made a bowl game in the Big Ten. So that our argument is tiresome for me. I think, sure, there are a lot of G5 programs that are struggling with funding, but to say that they didn't earn a spot in the playoff when every single year their coaching staffs and their rosters are getting pillaged for the best players and they have to rebuild every single year, that's earning it. Like fighting through that adversity and winning on that field, like it's just asinine to think that they don't deserve access. And since we're talking about Joel Klatt, like obviously the NCAA tournament take was the stupidest take I think I've ever heard a talking head say. I think he walked that back because he realized how stupid that was. We don't let the 15 and 16 seeds in because we think they're going to give a better game in March Madness to the 1 and 2 seeds. Obviously, a mid-tier ACC or Big East team or whatever that's on the bubble would give a better game to a 1 seed, but it's twofold to that. One, you earn the right to have an easier first round playoff game. Like rewarding Oregon with the season they had with a game against Notre Dame, that's backwards. I don't think that's a good idea at all. That's not a reward at all. And two, like I'll just go back to what are these G5 teams playing for? If they as a collective decide that they want to break away from the Power 4 and do their own thing, that is their prerogative. We live in a free country. I think they should be able to decide to do that. But until they do that, if we are considering them FBS football, there needs to be no separation. There has to be an avenue. Otherwise, it just doesn't make sense. Like you're just trying to have a super league without officially having a super league.
Well, and that I think is one of my biggest pain points is the same people that are telling you that these G5 teams can't compete are the same ones that are actually trying to make sports history.
Well, there's not another. Can I jump in real quick, Mitch? Because I'd hear the arguments. Do not hear us saying that we think they can compete on the field. We all saw the scores yesterday. We know that these games more often than not will not be close, but this is a different conversation that we're having than the individual games themselves. Continue. Sorry.
Right. Well, and I think two parts of that. One, sports are never going to guarantee you a competitive game on the field.
Right.
Ever. Right? I mean, the same people that are saying the G5 can't compete conveniently seem to forget all of the blowouts that we've had in the playoffs history in the first round, right? Suddenly that Tennessee thumping at Ohio State last year gets swept under the rug. And I think circling back to like Pate's point, that's where he formulated his idea that if you're just arguing that the G5 shouldn't be in the playoff because they can't compete, it's an incomplete thought, right? Because as soon as a G5 team does compete, as soon as you have a Cincinnati that's able to get into the next round of the playoffs, right? Suddenly your entire thesis falls apart. That's built on the sand. If you want to try and build it on more sturdy foundation, sure, go the strength of schedule route, go the conference route, what have you. That's part of our frustration too, is that the same people that are now, from a business perspective, trying to separate and create a super league are the ones to blame for this whole mess in the first place. Super leagues, super conferences cannot accurately determine who's actually good in a conference or not. And if you want to use Texas A&M as an example this year, go right ahead.
Yeah.
Right? They did. All of their wins did end up coming against the bottom half of the SEC. That's not how it looked in the preseason, right? We thought LSU was going to be great. We thought Florida was coming off of a 9-win campaign last year. There were a lot of reasons to believe that Texas A&M was going to have one of the most difficult schedules in the country. But all of that, all of the current kerfluffle that we find ourselves in is because we're playing in 16 and 17 team conferences where unbalanced schedules are a thing. Regionality is dead. We have no accurate way to really take the best teams in different parts of the country and then offer them up into a playoff to get those competitive schedules, right? So that premise is broken. But you cannot separate the G5 from the rest of the college football landscape and convince me that that's going to create a better product. You would be doing something that no other sporting league does, right? The MLB, the NFL, the NCAA tournament. Nobody just ignores part of the league and says, yeah, well, you can play in the regular season, but then you don't get any sort of payoff. You actually have your own playoff. That's asinine. That makes no sense.
Well, if we're pretending that they're part of the same division, again, if they want to break off and have like a mid-tier between FBS and FCS or go to the FCS, that's their prerogative. Like, right. But we actually talked to fans of those programs online and in person, and none of them want that. All of them want to be, in the top level of college football, even if it is competing for one or a maximum of 2 spots every year in the college football playoff. So I'll just say this, Mitch. What I think people forget when they're criticizing the 12-team format, and this goes back to your point about super conferences and networks pulling strings behind the scenes, right? This idea was originally pitched when the Pac-12 existed. Yeah. It was 12 teams with 6 auto bids to the top 6 conference champions. And that was assuming that the Power 5 at the time and one G5 team would get into the playoff. Obviously, it wasn't locked in. We saw that with the ACC this year, that the champion doesn't automatically get in. But back then, it sounds crazy to say back then, it was like 2 years ago, we had more sense of regionality. We had, the potential for a champion from the Pac-12, like an Oregon or a Washington at that time, to get into the playoff. And they would have actually won their conference by playing a vast majority of that conference and get in. It would have made a lot more sense. So yeah, the super conferences are the big problem. No one wants to talk about that. The networks want to throw the G5 under the bus and say, look at this evil that is being led into the college football playoff. And that's why you don't get bangers every single game. But it's really the super conferences. And who's to blame for that? The networks that did not want to keep the Pac-12 alive. And, there's a whole nother story in that. But yeah, I think the idea that just because we remove the G5, if we somehow did that we'd get every game would be great. It's so untrue. And I can show you the BCS national championship game when we had a 2-team playoff in 2012. Notre Dame was undefeated. Of course, they're going to be in that 2-team playoff, and they lost by like 40 points to Alabama.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're trying to jerry rig a system that gives you a competitive football game in every single instance, you're never going to find it.
Short
right?
of rigging the actual game and turning into the WWE, you can't do that.
Exactly. Games are not played on paper, and so again, I think the logical fallacies in my mind, the short-sighted nature that so many of these arguments are rooted in, I just feel like they're not coming from a place of reality. They're dreaming of an ideal situation where, yeah, every game is a 3-point game and all the big brands are constantly in it, but also there's a rotation of those big brands because as soon as there's a dynasty, we all complain. It just feels like a lot of half-baked thoughts. Also, a lot of, like you mentioned, marching orders. Let's call it what it is. Probably corruption at the highest levels, and that in the transfer portal as well. This uncapped transfer as many times as you want. The TJ Finley rule. That's preventing these G5 teams from stockpiling talent to any sort of meaningful degree. So the whole system really is set up for failure. I think everybody knows that, but because there's so much money invested in the current product, and the executives will go into a conference room with a chart that shows viewership going up towards the right hand part of the graph, they'll convince the boardroom that this game has never been healthier, that the product has never been better, and will continue to lengthen commercial times and expand the playoff to get as many dollars as we can.
Yeah, and those boardrooms are made up with people that do not like sports. They are media people. But the last thing I'll say on this, Mitch, is in the from the very top, from the ESPN and Foxes down to the 3 Technique and even just Jimmy's and Joe's at home, we are very good at reacting and analyzing after the fact of individual football games, right? Are we good at predicting football games? Like, just honestly, are you and I better than average at predicting if a team is going to be good in the preseason or win a game? Probably. Like, I think we are. But the reason there's billion-dollar resorts in Las Vegas is because as a whole, even the best of us are not good at telling you exactly what's going to happen on the field. And I'll circle back and say, I remember an article, I think it was on 3, maybe it was 247 or The Athletic a couple years ago. And they do this every now and then, right? Where what programs can actually win a national championship. And they'll list you like the top half of the SEC, the top half of the Big Ten, and then maybe 1 or 2 scattered around the country, and give you a list of like 10 to 12, maybe 15 teams that they say can actually win a national championship. Do you think Indiana's ever been listed in one of those articles?
I would bet not.
I would bet not. And I bet we can find the receipts, even going into this year, of anyone saying that Indiana could win a national championship. It just goes back to your point. Games are not played on paper. Programs are not built on paper. Recruiting rankings, even though they're accurate a lot of times, are not the end all be all of who should be playing for the national championship. And that's sports. Like, if we just want to simulate it, we can all play the video game. It's sports, and it's supposed to be played on the field, giving everybody their shot.